Howdy, friends. Well, our next lesson for the month of October, and remember this is a focus on Scripture, is going to be the lesson on the four evangelists. This should be a really interesting lesson, I think, for you to have with your family, as it discusses who actually were the four gospel writers and how the gospels each are a little bit different. So as you open up the lesson and look at each page, you'll notice that there's basically an entire page dedicated to each one of the four gospel writers. Matthew was one of the 12 apostles. And it's important to think that most of the apostles that we read of in Scripture were fishermen, but Matthew was a tax collector. And as you know, watch The Chosen, you've seen that the tax collectors were people who were educated, who dealt well with money, kept records. So if you think if Jesus wanted someone to write down everything he was doing during his ministry, like fisherman, oh, tax collector, you're probably the guy, right? The second gospel is Mark. Mark was not one of the 12 apostles, but if you read through Scripture, you notice that he was a pretty famous person in the early church. We hear of him both in the letters of St. Paul and in the Acts of the Apostles. He also is known by John Mark. And later in the letters that Peter wrote, 1 Peter, 2 Peter, he speaks of Mark as being his spiritual son, like his predecessor. So Mark was actually the scribe, or someone who went around with Peter. And the Gospel of Mark is often considered to be Peter's gospel. It's what he was preaching in Rome, and Mark was writing down later to the people who already believed that Jesus was the Messiah. St. Luke was not one of the 12 apostles as well. However, St. Luke was right when you read the beginning of the Gospel of St. Luke, he even admits that. He says, I've read accounts of these, but I'm going around and I'm trying to determine what actually happened. He says, I'm trying to make an orderly account of this Jesus guy. And it says that he asked eyewitnesses. St. Luke has the most explanative part of the Mary and Jesus' infancy narrative, and most theologians say that he probably interviewed Mary, so he got his information from Mary directly. St. Luke traveled with Paul throughout his missionary journeys, so he was someone who was well known in the Christian circles and interviewed those who knew Jesus and were around for his public ministry. And then the last gospel is written by St. John, one of the 12, known as the beloved disciple. His gospel is a little bit different. Most theologians agree that it was probably written last, and it was basically to fill in the gaps or to prove the divinity of Jesus from an eyewitness account of everything that he saw and did while he was traveling during Jesus' ministry. So as you kind of talk about each of these four people, who they were writing about, the information here will be really great. Then at the end of the lesson, you're basically going to play a little game. So these little cards right here have who was the gospel author based off the clue. And then you have like a game board here where you open them up and basically you ask the kids to read the little card and then place it on which one of the four gospel authors it goes to. There is 3 levels. There's level 1, which is definitely for like the younger saints, your kin for second graders. Level 2 is a little bit more challenging. So if you can try with all the kiddos, or particularly the older kids will like that. And there's also some bonus ones that has information that wasn't necessarily covered in the lesson, but you may know or your children may have heard and learned from somewhere else, so you can include those as well. I encourage you to have fun with it with your family. You can give someone a little prize or something, whoever wins, or however you want to do it. But it's just a neat way to reinforce the information material about who these four great men were. Have a great week. Keep making those saints. God bless.